Amara stumbled backward as the door slammed with a thunderous crash. The wind cut through her thin coat, slicing at her arms and legs. Her suitcase tumbled from her hands, skidding across the icy cement like it was alive, mocking her. She pressed her arms around herself, shivering, teeth chattering. "Why? Why now?" she whispered, voice trembling. If you've ever been betrayed, drop your city in the comments section, because what happens next will make you feel for Amara. Madame Rose's shadow loomed over her. "I said get out!" she snapped, shoving Amara toward the door. Her nails dug into Amara's shoulders hard enough to sting. Kioma pushed past her, pressing her heel against Amara's foot and smirking. "Move! You don't belong here!" Amara stumbled, gripping her suitcase as if it could hold her together. "Please, I didn't—" "Shut up!" Madame Rose barked, slamming a hand against the wall, rattling framed pictures. "All you do is lie! You've been nothing but trouble since the day you came!" Kioma leaned close, eyes cold. "Look at you, pretending you're part of this family. You're not. You never were. You're just a charity project." Amara's legs shook. She tried to steady herself, but Kioma shoved her forward. Her suitcase toppled again. The cold bit into her skin. The door creaked as Madame Rose shoved her hard. "Out!" The door slammed behind her. The wind screamed. Amara fell to her knees, shivering, tears mixing with the freezing air. Her chest heaved. Every word, every shove, every cruel laugh burned inside her. She pressed her palms against the cold cement, trying to push herself up. Her legs trembled. She could barely move. A low hum cut through the wind. At first, she thought it was a car. Then a light blazed across the driveway. Her eyes widened. A private jet descended, engines roaring, slicing through the night sky. Elijah stepped down, tall and calm, flanked by men in black suits. The Prime Minister followed, walking like he owned the air around him. "Amara, who did this to you?" Elijah's voice cut through the cold, steady and fierce. She stared at him, disbelief catching in her throat. They just... She couldn't finish. The betrayal, the shame, the cold, all of it collided at once. Her mind drifted to Elijah's face the first time they met. Quiet, humble, ordinary. And yet, he had looked at her differently than anyone ever had. Seen her, truly seen her. Never had she guessed he was a billionaire. Never had she imagined he could step into her life like this, turning the storm into calm. Madame Rose appeared at the window, face pale, hands trembling. Kioma pressed her face to the glass, eyes wide, panic etched across her features. Their laughter, their cruelty, dissolved in the presence of this impossible power. Amara's chest tightened, not with fear, but with something new, a sense of justice she had never known. Elijah knelt beside her, warm hands brushing her cold ones. "You're safe now," he said. "I've got you." She shivered, still numb from the cold, from the shock, from the betrayal. She wanted to fall apart, scream at them, beg, cry anything, but she didn't. Instead, she let herself feel the warmth of Elijah's hand, the quiet strength in his presence. She let the tears flow freely. Kioma's smirk faltered. Madame Rose's eyes widened. They had thrown her out into the cold, thinking they could break her. But here she was, alive, unbroken. Elijah stood, offering her his hand. She grabbed it. Every step toward the jet felt like leaving her old life behind. Every shiver, every tear, every ounce of humiliation melted with each step. The cold cement of the driveway, the bitter words, the cruelty, it all stayed behind. Inside, the warmth hit her like a wave. Soft seats, gentle hum of luxury surrounding her. Elijah draped a blanket around her shoulders, and she pressed herself into it, finally breathing. I can't believe this is real, she whispered. It is, he said. I promise. You're safe. Her mind flicked back to the early days of adoption. She had tried to belong. She tried to be loved. She tried so hard to please everyone. But Madame Rose and Kayoma had never let her. Every attempt met with mockery, every effort twisted into cruelty. Now, watching them from the jet steps, she realized their power over her was gone. Her body still shook, not from cold alone, but from the adrenaline, the relief, the shock. She thought about all the nights she had cried silently, wishing for someone to see her pain. And now, finally, someone had. The jet engines roared to life. Amara leaned against the warm leather, letting herself sink into the comfort she had been denied for so long. She looked at Elijah. Thank you, she whispered. For everything. He squeezed her hand gently. I would cross any sky for you, he said. You're not alone anymore. The driveway receded below, a distant memory of cruelty and betrayal. The wind no longer cut at her skin. The shivers faded, and for the first time in her life, Amara felt something she had never allowed herself to believe. Safety. She exhaled, eyes closing, letting the warmth, the power, and the presence of Elijah and the Prime Minister wash over her. She was stepping into a life that could never be taken from her. And in that moment, she whispered to herself, soft but firm, I am not theirs. I am me. Amara's hands were still shaking as she stepped into the jet. The cabin smelled of leather and warmth. Elijah slid a blanket around her shoulders again. She pulled it tighter, trying to hold herself together. She didn't dare look at him yet. Not because of shame, but because part of her couldn't believe this was real. You okay? Elijah asked softly, eyes searching hers. I think so, she whispered. She shook her head, swallowing hard. I can't believe they did that. They're not worth it, he said, his voice steady, but the fire behind it made her tremble in a different way. Not your mother, not your sister, not anyone who thinks they can decide your worth. Amara closed her eyes, remembering the shove, the slam, the laughter. Madame Rose had reached for her suitcase, yanked it like she was some object to be discarded. Kayoma had tripped her deliberately, leaning close to whisper, Go cry to your boyfriend. He won't save you. And he had. Her gaze lifted, meeting Elijah's. He came for me, she whispered. He actually came. Elijah gave a small smile. Of course I did. I promised, remember? Her chest tightened. She wanted to say so much more, but the words stuck. The anger, the humiliation, the relief, they all tangled inside her. She let out a shaky breath and hugged the blanket closer. Outside, the Okonkwo house looked small and helpless from the jet's tinted windows. Madame Rose leaned out of the doorway, face red and trembling. Kiyoma's jaw was tight, eyes wide in disbelief. Amara could hear their muffled shouting even from here. Part of her wanted to look away, to ignore them, but her chest burned with a new feeling. Satisfaction. Not gloating. Justice. Elijah placed a hand on her knee. Don't look. They don't deserve your attention anymore. She nodded, biting her lip to stop the tears. He was right. They had tried to break her, and they had failed. The jet hummed steadily, and she could feel the vibration under her hands. She watched Elijah move to the cockpit, speaking softly to the pilot. Then she noticed the man following him, tall, imposing, with a quiet confidence that made her stomach tighten. The Prime Minister. She blinked. The The Prime Minister? Elijah glanced back. We've got some connections, he said, as if that explained everything. Amara wanted to laugh, wanted to cry, wanted to scream. It was too much, too fast, too unbelievable. The jet lifted off smoothly, and she felt her stomach flip. For the first time, she allowed herself to relax just a fraction, letting the warmth sink in. Her thoughts drifted to the past, back to the days when she had tried to earn her place in the Okonkwo family. She remembered the mornings she had woken early to cook breakfast, only to have Madame Rose critique every move. Why is the porridge too thick? Why is the tea not strong enough? Kioma would snicker in the background, whispering insults under her breath. Every meal was a test she could never pass. At night, she had lain awake in her small room, listening to the family laugh downstairs while she cried silently, wishing she belonged. Every time she thought maybe they'd changed, they proved her wrong, and now they had thrown her out into the cold. Literally, Amara's eyes stung. She pressed her hands to her face, drawing in a shaky breath. I thought I belonged, she whispered. I thought they loved me. Elijah came back to her side, gently taking her hands. They didn't, and you're better off knowing it. She looked at him, studying his calm, steady expression. He seemed unshakable, like the world couldn't touch him. How are you? I mean, you just showed up like that, with a jet, with... Her voice trailed off, disbelief coloring every word. Elijah's eyes softened. You think I wouldn't come for you? He leaned closer. No matter what it took, I'd come. You matter too much to me to let them throw you out like that. Amara's heart ached, not just with love, but with shame for ever doubting him. She had thought he was just a kind man. She had no idea what he was capable of. And now, seeing him here, commanding the impossible, she realized how little she had known. She leaned back, feeling the leather against her chilled skin. I can't even begin to thank you, she said, voice trembling. You saved me. Elijah shook his head. No, you saved yourself. You just needed someone to remind you of your worth. The jet hummed quietly as the city lights passed below. Amara stared out the window, trying to process the whirlwind of the night. Every insult, every shove, every cruel word flashed in her mind, and with it, a fire began to build. A fire she hadn't known she had. A determination not just to survive, but to rise. Her thoughts flicked to Kioma, to Madame Rose, to the neighbors who had whispered about her, who had judged her quietly. They would see her. They would all see what she could become, and it would be impossible to ignore. Elijah watched her, reading the determination in her eyes. You're going to be all right, Amara, he said. Better than all right. You're going to be more than they ever imagined. Her lips curved in a small, almost shy smile. I hope so, she whispered. He squeezed her hand. You will, and I'll be right here, always. The Prime Minister approached then, his presence calm but authoritative. Miss Amara, we'll make sure you get the support you need, and anyone who crosses you again will regret it. Amara blinked. The weight of reality hit her. She wasn't dreaming. She wasn't imagining it. The night that had felt like the end was the beginning. She drew in a shaky breath and pressed herself against the blanket again, letting the warmth seep in. The cold, the fear, the humiliation, they were all behind her now. And in that moment, she made a silent promise. She would never let anyone throw her into the cold again. The jet banked gently, carrying them toward a future she had never dared to imagine. Outside, the city shrank, tiny and powerless, while inside, Amara felt something she had never felt before: strength, strength, protection, love, and the first taste of freedom. The jet hummed steadily as Amara watched the driveway shrink below. Madame Rose and Kioma were still there, frozen in the cold, staring up at her like they'd seen a ghost. Madame Rose's hand gripped the doorway as if it would hold her in place. Sweats greased her palms, and she could no longer hide. Kioma's jaw was tight, her fingers twisting at the edge of her blouse. They had thrown her into the night thinking she was powerless. Now, they were realizing just how wrong they were. Elijah leaned closer. "Do not look," he said softly, but there was a small smile on his face. "They don't deserve it." Amara swallowed hard. She wanted to look, wanted to see the shock on their faces, but she obeyed. Instead, she hugged the blanket tighter, letting warmth seep into her frozen skin. The wind, the cold, the humiliation, it all began to shrink behind her, replaced by a rising fire she hadn't felt before. Her mind drifted back to every time they had mocked her, every shove, every insult. Every late night she cried silently, wishing for someone to see her. Every morning she had forced herself to be cheerful, to pretend she belonged. Every attempt had been met with derision. She had always tried to survive, and now, for the first time, she felt like she could thrive. The jet touched down smoothly at a private airstrip. Amara's stomach twisted with nervous anticipation. This was new territory, real territory, a life she had never imagined. She followed Elijah down the steps, her suitcase clutched in one hand, blanket wrapped around her shoulders. Men in suits moved around them, calm but watchful. Where are we going?" she asked, her voice small but steadying. "You'll see," Elijah said, a faint grin tugging at his lips. "First, we handle what needs to be handled." Amara's brow furrowed. "Handle what?" Elijah's eyes softened. "Your family, the people who hurt you, they need to know you're not the weak girl they threw out into the cold." Her heart skipped. She didn't know if she was ready for that. Part of her wanted to vanish, to escape this entire nightmare. But another part, stronger, fiercer, burned with anger. The rage of every insult, every shove, every rejection came rushing back. She straightened her spine. "Let them see," she said. The jet doors opened again, and they were escorted into sleek black SUVs waiting below. Cameras flashed in the distance. Amara's heart jumped. Was this part of the plan? She glanced at Elijah. His eyes met hers, steady and calm. "Relax. Watch." The SUVs glided down the street near the Okonkwo neighborhood. People were outside, drawn by the roar of the jet and the buzz of security. Whispers filled the air as neighbors peeked from windows. "Is that Amara?" someone murmured. Amara's chest tightened. The thought of them seeing her now, not broken, not cold, not crying, it made her stomach twist in both fear and anticipation. The car pulled to a halt just outside the house. Madame Rose was pacing, hands clenched, shouting at Kioma. "Why is this happening? What is she doing here?" Amara took a deep breath, looking out the tinted windows. For the first time, she saw them clearly. Not as family, not as caretakers, but as the people who had underestimated her. They had counted her out. They had thrown her into the cold, and now she had the upper hand. Elijah opened the door for her. She stepped out, blanket slipping slightly, hair mussed, eyes bright. The cold bit at her again, but she hardly noticed. The cameras clicked, the neighbors whispered, and the family froze. Madame Rose's mouth opened and closed, no words coming out. Kioma's eyes widened, a flicker of fear crossing her face. She tried to step forward, but her legs wobbled. Amara held up a hand. Stop, she said, her voice steady, sharper than she expected. You threw me into the cold, treated me like I was nothing. Do you see me now? Madame Rose stumbled backward. Amara, you don't get to speak to me, Amara interrupted. Every word carried the weight of years of humiliation. Every shove, every insult, every lie. You wanted me gone. You thought I'd stay weak. You thought I'd beg. You thought I'd break. She paused, letting the silence stretch. The neighbors leaned closer, cameras capturing every moment. But you were wrong. Kioma's hand trembled as she raised it to her mouth. Madame Rose's eyes darted around, panic rising. The power had shifted, and they could feel it. Elijah stepped forward, placing a hand lightly on Amara's shoulder. This is your moment, he said softly. Say what needs to be said. Amara's chest heaved. You tried to bury me, she said, voice rising with emotion. But I am not what you made me. I am stronger. I am smarter. And I will not be treated like nothing ever again. The neighbors murmured. The cameras clicked. Even from inside the house, the Okonkwo family could feel the weight of the crowd, the judgment. Elijah turned to Madame Rose and Kioma, his gaze icy. And anyone who touches her again will answer to me. The Prime Minister stepped closer. Miss Amara has our full support, he said. Her future is hers to build. No one will stand in her way. Madame Rose sank onto the nearest chair, shaking. Kioma turned, retreating into the house, eyes wide with fear. For the first time, Amara saw them as powerless. Their cruelty had no armor left. Amara took a deep breath. She looked at Elijah. Thank you, she said, for believing in me, for standing up for me. Elijah gave a faint smile. I never doubted you. I never will. She felt warmth, safety, and a flicker of hope she hadn't felt in years. But beneath it all, a fire began to grow. This was just the beginning. They had underestimated her for too long, and she was ready to rise. The night air was cold, but Amara didn't shiver. She didn't feel fear. She felt power. She felt the thrill of reclaiming what was always hers. Elijah leaned down and whispered, Ready to go home? Amara nodded. Ready. As they walked toward the SUV, the cameras following, the crowd whispering, the Okonkwo family watching in helpless rage, she understood something she had never known. No one could ever throw her out again. Not when she had finally found herself.